Visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So today uh, we will discuss about integrator. All of you please note down parallelly whatever I am writing here. So integrator circuit using operational amplifier, right? So when you have discussed about the differentiator circuit, so probably integrator is also a part and parcel of many of our analog electronic circuits, right? Again, in your analog computers, in your instrumentation amplifiers, right, analog to digital converters, we make use of the integrators as well as the differentiator, right? So now when I say when I have used this kind of waveform, right, don't take down this, uh, to obtain a kind of this signal, right? Let us say that yeah, here something like this we had taken in the previous class, right? So when a triangular waveform is getting converted into a square waveform in a differentiator, obviously, so when you talk about the differentiator here, so when you integrate this square waveform, right, you are going to get a triangular waveform. This is quite evident and obvious, right? So in order to understand the working of an integrator circuit, we will try to take it in that manner, right? So first we will try to take the circuit. Before that, before going into the circuit, right, so what exactly an integrator does? Basically it produces an output voltage. So what exactly you mean by integration? That is proportional to area, proportional to the area, right? So basically area means what? It's amplitude into time. This is what we mean by integration, right? So an integrator basically produces an output voltage proportional to the area, where the area is represented as the product of its amplitude and the time contained under input waveform, contained under input waveform. So this is how you are going to get the integrators working. Let us try to see now the circuit diagram. Circuit diagram we will see, and after having seen the circuit diagram, we will try to see how exactly this circuit operates. Please take down the circuit diagram. Okay, so again we will see the inverting configuration only. Then here, very importantly, right, you please note the diagram carefully. Here let me draw a smaller one. This is going to be my output, and as usual here I have one resistance, that is the biasing resistance, and here I have got one input resistance. Here I have got one more resistance, which of course doesn't participate in the process of integration, yet we are using it for some purpose. I will tell you what is that. So this is plus VCC minus VEE. So this is going to be your V0. So this is your V in. Now let me write this as R1, this resistance as R2, and this we will take it as C1, the capacitor C1, which is responsible for the operation of integration or the integration operation, right? So now the input that I am going to give here would be of this nature. Just now I have already told you. So why we are considering this as the input signal? This is very a common signal which we generally are capable of obtaining, right? And when I come to the output here, please note it carefully. So if this is the ground level, my output would be something like this. This is going to be delta V. You can take this as delta V, and of course this is delta T after having seen the differentiator operation, right? So probably these waveforms are easy to understand here. So this V0 is again taken with respect to ground. So this is what is the circuit to obtain the integration operation, and this is your V0 and this is your V in. All of you please note down this diagram carefully, properly. Integrator which produces an output voltage proportional to the area contained under the input waveform, which of course is the amplitude into time of the input signal, right? So now we will try to see how exactly this circuit works. Please note the change between a differentiator circuit and integrator circuit. In the differentiator circuit, the capacitor was connected in series with the input signal, right? Unlike the differentiator, here the capacitor comes in the feedback path, right? The capacitor comes in the feedback path, and it is having a parallel resistance R2, which, as I have already told you, of course doesn't participate in the integration operation, but it is meant for some other purpose, which I will tell you after having explained the working of this particular circuit, right? So now if you don't consider this capacitor here, right? So how do you see this circuit? Can anybody tell me? If there is no capacitor C1, if there is no capacitor C1, what this circuit is reduced to? Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Voltage followers.
Voltage follower, fine, as long as your R2 is equals to R1, but voltage follower you are giving the input to the non-inverting terminal. Am I right? Is it not an inverting amplifier?
Yes, sir.
It is an inverting amplifier if there is no capacitor. Am I right? Voltage follower, you are going to give the input to the non-inverting terminal, right? Here you are giving the input to the inverting terminal only, and this is another important point to be noted. The integration is not possible at all the frequencies, because the very behavior of this capacitor, right, it depends upon at what frequency the circuit is operating, right. So you know, the capacitor acting as a short circuit or open circuit at different frequencies, at DC or at a high frequency. Accordingly, this circuit also has got certain range of frequencies for its proper operation. That is another point to be kept at the back of the mind, right. So now here let us try to take the analysis of the circuit. Okay, so here the circuit is basically it is an inverting amplifier, with a capacitor in the feedback path. This is what is one sentence with which you can completely explain this integrator circuit. It is basically an inverting amplifier with a capacitor in the feedback path, right. So now so the non-inverting terminal is grounded here, right. Now the input voltage Vi, appears across R1. Am I right? The input voltage Vi or Vi in, it appears across R1. So therefore the input current, so here I take this as the input current I1, the input current I1 is equals to Vi in divided by R1. Again we will take the virtual ground concept here. This is Vx, this is Vy. So Vx and Vy are 0 by the virtual ground concept. So therefore we will have I1 is equals to V in divided by R1, right. So now this is the elementary the circuit status. Now we will try to see the operation from the point of view of the input signal. During the positive half cycle of the input signal, what happens, and during negative half cycle of the input signal, what happens. Okay, so now during the positive half cycle, of input, so that means during this positive half cycle of the input, so definitely you have the input current I1 which is constant. So your constant I1 flows through C1. Please note here, of course the current I1 is flowing through R1, right. So your bias current is very, very small in comparison with the current I1. So therefore the entire current has to go here. Now you may ask, why the current has to flow through C1? There is one more resistance R2 here, right. The value of R2 is taken very high. I will tell you why we have to take the value of R2 very high. So our main intention is to divert this current I1 through the capacitor C1, right. So because we want the charging and discharging phenomena to take place across the capacitor, that is how you will be able to realize the operation of the integrator, right. So now when the R2 value is taken to be very high, definitely during the positive half cycle the current will flow through the capacitor C1, right, and it will start charging the capacitor, right. So now the positive of the capacitor terminal, you can see here, this is plus, this is minus when the capacitor is getting charged like this. So the positive terminal of the capacitor is connected to inverting terminal here, right. So as the positive terminal of C is connected to inverting end of op amp as the positive of the capacitor is connected to the inverting terminal of the op amp. So this inverting terminal is nothing but the virtual ground. We have already taken this Vx as well as Vy. So now what exactly happens? The voltage across the capacitor, right? So that is Vc is nothing but V naught. All of you agree with me, is it not? As long as there is no voltage drop, or when as long as there is no current through R2, let us say that when the capacitor is getting charged in this way, so this V naught, whatever we are finding, this is nothing but the voltage across the capacitor, right? So Vc is equals to V naught, or you can even take it as minus V naught, right? As long as its polarity is concerned, as long as magnitude is concerned, it is V naught, right? So now as the input current is constant, now the current I1 is constant, the capacitor will be now charging in the linear way, and the output across the capacitor will be a negative going ramp, correct or not? It is going to be a negative going ramp because I have connected the input to the inverting terminal, and your V naught will be minus of the voltage across, I will write it as minus only, minus of the voltage across the capacitor. Since the charging current is a constant current, you are going to get a negative going ramp. So that means you can see here now from this point to this point here, and this is the positive input cycle of the input signal, positive cycle of the input signal, and your output here is going to be a negative going ramp. Okay, so I think all of you can understand this. Now during negative half cycle, what happens during the negative half cycle? The direction of the current reverses. During the negative half cycle, the direction of the current reverses, and what exactly should happen now? The capacitor should charge in the reverse direction, right? I will write in the other page. The capacitor now gets charged in the opposite direction. The capacitor now should get charged in the opposite direction. So definitely you will have change in the voltage polarity. You have the change in the voltage polarity. So what exactly is going to be produced now? A positive going ramp is produced. A positive going ramp is going to be produced. I will go back here. So now during this point, so when you have come here, now you are going here, your output now is going in the positive direction. Of course it will continue to go like this as long as this input signal is a continuous signal. So you have the negative going ramp from this point to this point, and now when you move in this direction, when you go from the positive to negative half cycle, right? So your output is going to be a positive going ramp, right? So what exactly happens? A square wave, input square wave is transformed into output triangular wave. The input square wave is transformed into the output triangular wave. So this is how you are going to get the integrator operation. Now we will try to see mathematically also how exactly we are going to get the operation, right? So you have Vx is equals to Vy is equals to 0, that is your virtual ground. I'm going back here. Vx is equals to Vy is equals to 0, that is your virtual ground. So now let us try to analyze the current here, because we have done the similar thing in our discussion as long as the differentiator is concerned also, right? So the current I1 here, right? What is the current I1 now here? So V in minus Vx divided by R1. All of you can understand this. The current I1 from the input side is V in minus Vx divided by R1. I can write from input side, your I1 is equals to V in minus Vx divided by R1, which is V in divided by R1, because your Vx is equals to 0. Now from the output side, let us try to see the current from the output side. So what will be the value of I1 here? You can see here, this from the output side. So it is nothing but the C, okay, into d by dt of Vx minus V naught. So this is my Vx here, this is V naught. If you look at the same direction of the current, right? So it is capacitance into the rate of change of voltage. So I will write it like this now. From the output side, your I1 is equals to C1 into d by dt of Vx minus V naught. So what I can write here, it as minus C1 into d by dt of V naught, because where Vx is equals to 0, I will take it as V naught, d naught, d V naught. Now I can call as equation number 1, this as equation number 2. We have done a very similar thing in our previous slides also, when we discussed about the differentiator. So V in divided by R1 is equals to minus C1 into dV naught by dt. Now I have to relate the output voltage with respect to input voltage, but your output voltage is already in the form of a derivative. So therefore, if I want to get V naught from dV naught by dt, I have to integrate the equation on both the sides, right? Integrating the above equation on both the sides, integrating the above equation on both the sides. So what you are going to get, let me take the limits from 0 to t. V in divided by R1 dt is equals to minus C1, 0 to t only I will take d by dt of V naught into dt. So now this will give me some solution here. So this is nothing but on the other side, that is 0 to, one second, integration 0 to t V in divided by R1 dt is equals to, on the other side I am going to get this as minus C1 into V naught, because I am integrating the differential here, we are going to get V naught. So now I am going to get V naught is equals to minus 1 divided by R1 C1 into 0 to t V in of dt. So this is my final equation, what I wanted here. V naught is equals to minus 1 divided by R1 C1 into integration of the input signal and my R1 C1 here happens to be, what is this? Time constant of the integrator. It is the time constant of the integrator, right? Now this plays a very important role. Your time constant, it plays a very important role, because the larger the time constant, more accurate will be the integration, right? Larger time constant leads to accurate integration. Larger time constant leads to accurate integration, right? So this is how you are going to get the operation of the integrator. Even mathematically also we can get, right? So this basically here the input square wave, right, whatever we have taken there, it is an illustration. You can give any kind of the waveform and its integration has to happen there. So for the purpose of convenience, we have taken an input square wave which is transformed into the output triangular waveform, right? And here there is one more point to be written. Let me see whether I have space here or not. If I don't have the space, I will write here. So here the peak amplitude, all of you please write down the peak amplitude of the output waveform, depends on, now you go back here, see here the peak amplitude of the output waveform, this one, okay, this is what is the peak amplitude, right? It depends upon what parameters? It has to depend upon your input current, am I right? The peak amplitude of the output waveform depends upon the input current I1, we have taken the input current as I1, and also delta T. The delta T is also going to decide the input, the peak amplitude, right? Now we have I1 is proportional to the input peak value, which is Vp. I1 is proportional to the input peak value Vp. I don't know whether I have marked it or not here. Input peak value, this is what is your Vp peak value, right? Your current is definitely proportional to the input peak value. Delta T is the duration of input pulse. Delta T is the duration of the input pulse. So this leads in saying that the output is directly proportional to the area under each half cycle of input, because this is from where we had started. In an integrator, basically you are going to get an output which is going to have the amplitude and the time multiplied, or the area contained by the input waveform. This is what we have seen here, okay? So this is one important parameter which you should look into as long as the integrator circuit is concerned, right? And now when I look at the circuit here, what is the role of R2 basically, right? So in your differentiator also, we had a capacitor in series with the input voltage, and we had R1 also there, is it not, right? We had R1 not for the purpose of differentiation, but it was used for the compensation purpose because of the possible lag that is introduced by R and C. In order to compensate for that, we had used one series resistance, but here your R2 is used for R2 used to avoid saturation of output. I will tell you what exactly we mean by saturation, because we have not yet discussed about the switching circuits here, right? So depending upon the input, generally the output is swung slightly lesser value of the input, right, in both positive as well as negative direction. Generally the output swing is accepted to reach about 80 to 85% of the supply voltage, that is VCC and VEE, right? So if you do not select the supply voltage much higher, sufficient enough for the output not to saturate, then the output may go into one of the states, whether it is a logic high or logic low, and it will remain there, right? It will not swing back to the negative side. That is called as the saturation. In order to avoid the saturation, we are using the value of R2. When we discuss about the switching circuits, I will throw more lights on what exactly we mean by saturation. But please note that here your R2 is not meant for the purpose of the integration, but it is to avoid the output to go into the saturation region. So even in our design also, we will take some of the points related to this. That time we will probably get more information. Okay, so now let us go into the design part of it. Design, again a simple method here in order to have the design. So you have your I1 to be selected much greater than your I bias, right? As you know, I1 is generally taken to be 100 times IB max. These are all the common points which you have to keep at the back of your mind. As long as you have used your BiFET op amp or IC741, your I1 is approximately 100 times the IB max, right? Now for constant charging current, your C is equals to I into delta T divided by delta V. This we have even seen in the case of differentiator. So therefore your C1 is equals to I1 into delta T divided by delta V. I hope that you know what exactly we mean by delta T and delta V. We have already represented it in our waveforms there, right? So delta V is the peak to peak amplitude. Delta V is peak to peak amplitude. Delta V is the peak to peak amplitude, and delta T is the ramp time. It is the ramp time. Delta T is the ramp time. Okay. So selection of R1 and C is interchangeable. You know what is the meaning of this? Either you can select the value of C, assume the value of C, then you can get the value of R1, or you can calculate the value of R1 and then you can select the value of C, right? So your R1 is equals to V1 by I1, and R2 is approximately 20 times R1. I have already told you what for this thumb rule is used, right? So in order to avoid the compensation mechanisms to be forced, right? Generally the value of R2 is taken to be 20 times R1. That means whenever the gain exceeds 20, generally it is understood that the compensation is required, right? So your R3 is again R1 in parallel with R2. This is exactly same as what we have taken in our previous design of the differentiator, right? Now a very important point here again is, as we have taken there, the supply voltage is selected, at least we have taken this for the differentiator as well, 3 volts greater than the positive or negative peak of output, so that the op amp doesn't saturate. This I have already told you. The supply voltage is taken at least 3 volts greater than the positive or negative peak of the output, so that the operational amplifier doesn't saturate. That is one more point. Anyway, that doesn't come in the design, but you should keep at the back of your mind. So at high frequencies, the capacitor, the C, behaves as, can somebody tell me? I have already told you this while discussing about the differentiator. At high frequencies, the capacitor, even in the beginning also I have told, yes, at high frequencies what happens to the capacitor? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
At what happens at high frequency? The capacitor behaves as a Xc is equals to 1 divided by 2 pi Fc. When F is very, very high, what is the value of Xc?
Low.
0. Is it not? At very high frequency it will be low, but ideally it will be 0. The capacitor behaves as
Short circuit.
short circuit, right? When the capacitor behaves as the short circuit, I will go back to this. What happens here? Your circuit is now reduced to a simple inverting amplifier, right? As long as again the value of R2 is equals to R1, right? So it will act as a voltage follower also, but you have the output in the phase shifted manner, right? In the actual voltage follower, we don't want the output to be in the phase shifted manner, but here the output is going to get in the phase shifted manner, right? So this is one point you should always keep in mind, right? So at high frequencies the capacitor behaves as the short circuit, giving 100% feedback. So you have either voltage follower or inverting amplifier. So this is another point to be kept at the back of your mind. I hope you have followed all these things clearly.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now based on this, we will try to solve one simple example. very simple one. Shall I proceed with the example?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Design an integrator circuit, simple one. Design an integrator circuit using BiFET op-amp to produce a triangular waveform, with 4 volts peak to peak. Please note this. The input is plus or minus 5 volt square wave with 500 hertz frequency, with 500 hertz frequency. Take IB max is equals to 4000 nanoampere. 4000 nanoampere. Design an integrator circuit using BiFET op-amp to produce a triangular waveform with 4 volts peak to peak. The input is plus or minus 5 volt square wave with 500 hertz frequency. So as usual, let me draw the circuit diagram. So I have a resistance here, then I have a capacitor, and I have a resistance in the feedback. That's all. I have got one more resistance here. This is minus plus, this is plus VCC minus VEE, and this is your V0. This is R1, this is R2, this is C1. So this is your input, which is a square wave. Deliberately I have written 2 cycles because my input frequency is given to be 500 hertz, and this peak to peak is it is not peak to peak, it is peak only. This peak is 5 volts. Please try to have all these things as per the requirement. This is very important. Now the output voltage, you would get something like this. Okay, so this output voltage has got delta V, peak to peak, I think is given to be 4 volts. This is delta V from here to here. So this delta V is equals to 4 volts. Yeah, this is what is clear. So what is the value of delta T? This is one thing to be calculated. So this is the total T. T is equals to 1 divided by 500. T is equals to 1 divided by frequency. Am I right? Can somebody tell me what is the value of capital T? Delta T will be
2 milliseconds.
2 milliseconds. So
Yes, sir.
delta T will be 1 millisecond. Please note that. Okay, so that delta T I have already marked in my previous waveform, that is this one. This will be delta T, that is only pertaining to half cycle. Okay, so this is very important for me now. Delta V and delta T. Delta V and delta T. So I think whatever is required for us to calculate, we have taken now. So your I1, see now there is one, all of you listen to me very carefully. There is one very important point to be noted here in this problem. Now for bi-FET op amp, even though we have said that we take I1 is 100 times IB max, we can calculate, right? But in some of the examples, okay, in some of the books, what they have given is they have assumed the value of capacitor. Assume C1. Who is that? C1. So this C1 is assumed to be 0.1 microfarad, which is the standard value. Okay, so C1 value is assumed. Even if you do not assume the value of C1 also, you can easily calculate the value of C1, because I have already got the formula to calculate the value of C1 here, which is equals to I1 delta T by delta V. Correct or not? So your C1 is equals to I1 delta T divided by delta V. But for that, I have to substitute it in this equation, right? Not all the op amps will hold good this equation. So it is for IC741 only. I1 equal to 100 times IB max is for IC741. But many a times we will take it as a generalized equation. I1 is equals to 100 times IB max, right? So now if you proceed with the two different methods, you would get two different answers here, right? Anyway, what I will do is, first I will take C1 is equals to 0.1 microfarad. So once I take C1 is equals to 0.1 microfarad, I should be able to calculate the value of I1, which is not as per this equation. Which is not as per this equation. So this I1 will be C1 into delta V divided by delta T. C1 is 0.1 microfarad, delta V is 4 divided by delta T is 1 millisecond. Can you tell me what is the value of I1 I am going to get here?
0.004.
400 microamperes. Please check whether your I1 is 400 microampere. Whatever it is, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now you calculate the value of I1 using the first formula, 100 times IB max. Can somebody calculate the value of I1 using 100 times IB max?
Both are same, sir.
Same, because the values are taken in such a way that both should give us the same value. But in some other examples, it may not be the same case. Okay, here the values are chosen in such a way that you either use this formula or you use this formula, you are going to get the value of I1 same. So that means you also have the flexibility in assuming the value of C1, which is always supposed to be 0.1 microfarad. It is the standard value. You may ask, if I assume 0.01, what happens? Nothing will happen. It is the assumption, but you cannot assume 0.0234 something like that. You should always assume the standard values. Anyway, in this problem, both the methods will give us the same values of I1. So therefore, let us proceed with the calculation of R1 now. The next one, R1 is equals to V1 divided by I1, which V1 is input voltage 5, no? Input voltage V1 or V in 5 volts, yeah, divided by 400 microampere. So you are going to get how much? 12.5 kilo ohm. Am I right?
Yes,
12.5 kilo ohm. So then the remaining things are very simple. R2 is 20 times R1, which is equal to approximately 250 kilo ohm. 250 kilo ohm. And your R3 is R1 in parallel with R2, which is approximately the smaller value. I can take it as R1, which is approximately 12.5 kilo ohm. So these are the different resistance values. And very important, your plus VCC and minus VEE, they should be 3 volts greater than 3 volts greater than output peaks. So that means your plus VCC output peak is what is the value of output? 4 volts peak to peak, is it not? So it should be at least greater than 7 volt, and VEE should be less than minus 7 volt. This is one you should always keep at the mind in order to avoid the saturation.